James leads growth at the AI audio scale-up ElevenLabs, and Itxaso, you're a partner at Notion Capital, investing in many AI startups and scale-ups. So James, we'll start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about ElevenLabs' journey? It's raised so much money and scaled so incredibly quickly. I know that you're relatively new to the whole operation, but could you tell us about how they've managed to make that happen and swerve all these obstacles that are so common with scaling AI startups?
Yeah, ElevenLabs is an extremely fast-growing company. I think at its core is incredible voice technology. I think from day one we focused on building some of the best AI audio models in the world, and I think the founders have also focused on keeping talent density incredibly high. So they have a number of small teams of very capable people working very hard to scale. So yeah, I've only been there 10 weeks. I can't really talk about what it was like 2 years ago, but I think it's great minds working very hard.
Itxaso, could you tell us a little bit about the kind of, you've been in the game for quite a while, you've invested in so many AI startups and scale-ups. Tell us about how the scaling journeys that you've seen across a range of verticals.
Within the AI space?
Yes, within AI.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was just thinking, it sounds like I'm a little bit old, but yeah, I've been around for a little while. So in terms of the verticals, obviously today we are seeing that AI is being used everywhere. So I worked at Microsoft before Notion. I was doing investments in Europe for Microsoft. And I started my career in 2012. And at that time, we used to ask companies, are you building on premises or are you building on the cloud? Nobody will ask that today, right? Or are you building on mobile? Are you mobile friendly? Nobody will ask that today. So I think that is what is the transition that is happening to AI. It's absolutely that, which means that we are seeing companies using data to better serve their customers and build efficiency. So personalization and efficiency building are probably the two things that you can do. And you can do that across any different vertical. And today, any company that is not doing that is lagging behind. So with that, I want to answer that we are seeing AI in every vertical, and it would be very difficult for us to invest in companies that today are building products without using the power of data. There are some of them that can build some sort of, let's say, differentiation, for example, in fintech or in health tech, through regulatory approvals and regulatory frameworks. But other than that, we definitely am seeing AI embedded everywhere, and including health tech and fintech, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of links into what you've previously said, but if you could tell us a little bit about which AI innovations or breakthroughs excite you the most, each of you. I'm assuming it will be quite heavily audio related for you, James.
Yeah, I think we're getting very close to real-time dubbing. So in a very near future, I could be speaking to you in English right now, but in almost instant, sort of with instant latency, you might hear me speak in French or German or Mandarin, which I think is incredibly exciting. Similarly, when we get closer to real-time, we have real-time translation. So I could be speaking to you now and there could be subtitles in any language. So yeah, I'm very excited about getting to that real-time point with audio. But also some of the work we do actually brings voices back to people who've lost them. So a lot of people who have ALS, they are using these very janky, robotic-sounding voices. And with ElevenLabs, they've been able to actually clone their voice before they lost it with recordings and videos. And they can speak almost naturally and as if they were speaking before. So yeah, we all get quite excited about the latest cutting-edge technology, but already what exists today can change people's lives.
Wow, that's a crazy, particularly moving use case.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really very product-led, and as such, I've been always looking to, I only invest in B2B space. I've been always trying to bring to the B2B space consumer-like experiences. like giving employees the best tools that we can to make their life easier. So being much more productive. So how many times we heard people that they are in positions that they are using tools, technology tools, and I started my career working, I'm an engineer, so I worked at Daimler, the car manufacturer, and I tell you that I was in 2000, 2001, and I tell you that the systems that we were using there were very far away to what we are used to use today in a tech organization. So bringing those tools that make employees be more productive and focus much more on things that really matter to them, give them the time back too. I think it is very, very important. So I'm excited about seeing the tools that can exponentially improve the way employees today behave and act within their organizations.
And when we're talking about that exponential growth, that global growth, reaching out to many, many more markets at once, which Eleven has done very successfully, and I know that many of your portfolio companies have, what are the barriers that those companies face when scaling so quickly, and how do you help them tackle them?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and particularly in AI, there are several areas, but as we are talking here about AI, definitely there are different regulatory frameworks that are being set up in different countries, and that might be a barrier for some startups. In some other places, we can see that as a benefit. In fact, think of fintech. So if we think about it, the fact that at the European level, they've been created some regulatory frameworks that allowed fintech companies to go from one country to another one by passporting the regulation. That's definitely, it is a regulation, but at the same time has improved the way we expand. And in fact, if we think about it, on payments space, for example, the US is behind, because they haven't been able to launch anything like that, any framework that brings together the different financial institutions, and they sit on the same regulations. So it can be a difficulty in some cases, but it can also build a good ecosystem and a much more trusted environment for companies to operate, because if we think about it on AI particularly, I believe you've experienced this when you sell to big corporates, they need to go through a lot of procurement and security checks. And if there are some standards for those security checks, and those are basically across Europe, I know there is a hurdle, but at least there is something that you know if you tick the boxes, you will be able to get in. So there is that balance always, that you want to remove regulation, but at the same time, regulation also can facilitate adoption and geographical expansion in some cases.
Just delving into that a little more, how do you think of Europe with respect to these challenges? Do you find that it's unique? Do you find that things are changing?
I do think that Europe is cautious about many of those changes and many of the things that are happening, not only in AI, but privacy. We were the first ones talking about this GDPR and all of that, and some of the other regulations. So they've been, some of those, Europe has been pioneering in many of those regulations. I think while at the beginning we've seen them as a barrier, they haven't been such a barrier at the end of the day. People have been able to go around them, while GDPR, yes, it has closed a few doors. It has also opened an opportunity to work together across the different organizations and open up data in some industries that maybe in other countries they are not able to get into. I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about financial, more regulated industries. So I think sometimes we lead with that regulation frameworks and we freak out about it, and then they become a little bit more relative, and taking into account there is no politicians in the room, right? We are all on at the same time, so at the same side of the table, so we are able to kind of juggle it around and position ourselves in such a way that that we make it work.
I'm so on board with this idea of Europe being pioneering when it comes to regulation. It's not a very popular opinion, but no, I think there's something to it. James, with such an innovative kind of voice tech product, when a company is scaling so quickly, when ElevenLabs is, how do you balance the R&D efforts with the kind of business growth side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. We think about engineers in 3 brackets at ElevenLabs. So we have our research engineers who we're not really supposed to distract, and they are just purely focused on improving the models. We have the product engineers who are building the experiences that our customers are using. And then we have growth engineers who are working with me and the rest of the growth team to reach more users. And these growth engineers are almost like product managers in themselves. So the company at the moment has a policy of hiring no product managers, which is funny because I actually got in touch and said, do you have any product management roles? And they said, no, but you can do growth. So these growth engineers are very self-sufficient. For example, we had a meeting on Monday talking about SEO and how do we get from position 4 or 5 to position 1 for a certain keyword. And an idea came up, and the engineer went and built it and set up the experimentation, ran an A/B test, and this morning said, we're getting 7% more signups. I'm going to deploy this to everyone. And in a more traditional company, that would have required a product manager, and it might have required 4 or 5 people to kind of get that done. But he just did it himself. So yeah, I think we try and hire pragmatic, growth-oriented people rather than people who just want to sort of focus on the code and nothing else.
That's really interesting that you're giving your engineers that kind of responsibility and an investment in the growth of the company in general. Now that you're in agreement, I'm going to pit you against each other a little bit by asking Itxaso, when it comes to kind of voice AI or general AI startups, what are your evaluation criteria to get the investor's perspective?
So from the investor perspective, there are a couple of things that we look at. One, and very importantly, I already say, is I'm very product-led, and I don't believe that a company can survive with very much point solutions. They need to own a workflow, or they need to own a space. It can be a vertical, but they need to solve the problem end to end. And if it is voice and the company uses voice in 4 different applications, they should be able to solve all of them. They can't be going through to 4 different companies to solve these problems, right? So, so the same thing with an end-to-end solution. So to me, it's very important to see that they understand within product that how to own the whole end-to-end. They have a big vision for that product. They don't have a point solution right now, but they are working towards building something that basically owns the whole, what is said, the job to be done by someone or verticalized, or you come from product. So I basically have that mentality, and that's the first one. The second one is we know that LLMs are not perfect, and it's very interesting that James is talking about those R&D or engineers who are basically improving their models and making those models the best in the market. Many of the LLMs off the shelf are not there yet and needs to be fine-tuned. Where do you see that? You look at companies that start buying the product and churn. So metrics like churn become incredibly relevant for us. And so those are very, very important. It's not only the growth, but also how much are we losing at the same place, at the same case, right? And I will probably say the other ones are pretty similar to the rest of the companies, but the team is very, very important because they really need to have some experts in AI today to be able to differentiate on that. It's not taking an LLM off the shelf, and they need to be paying attention to that for sure.
Do you find that that's difficult because a lot of the AI talent is snatched up immediately by those bigger companies?
It is. I'm not really sure if the best talent wants to work for the biggest companies. I will, in fact, question that. Yeah, there will be a percentage of people who would do that. I've been at Microsoft, and I tell you that that's not the best environment. Where James was talking about, you propose something, we test it, and we launch it. Forget about that. I mean, forget about that completely. And there are many people who, particularly technical people, who don't want to be in those environments where you cannot have a direct impact. And startups is the type of place where you get in, you will never get out. Corporates is a place where you get in, and I will definitely look in a couple of years, whether 2-3 years, whether if you are innovative enough, you are still staying in that company, because yeah, it's not the same type of thing.
Absolutely. In terms of these startups which kind of claim a whole vertical end-to-end, do you have any examples maybe from companies that Notion's worked with?
Yes.
Of these companies that...
Absolutely. I mean, vertical solutions are very much something specific on that, but my last investment, it's in a company that is based in France. It's called Naboo, N-A-B-O-O, and they are, if you think of TravelPerk, which is this company that manages travel for larger corporations, the same thing but for events. And basically they've built a technology that connects with procurement. So you have a marketplace with the different venues, the caterers, anything that you need to run your events, and that connects to procurement so that they can procure any new venue that comes in and goes to the marketplace and connects directly with financial teams. And so the budgets, the expense, and all of that gets all managed within the financial team. And so there is a tech behind it, there is a marketplace, and within that marketplace, people can go and they have agents internally. They don't need an external event organizer. They go there and they have an agent that helps them choose the venue through some questions and find the venue they need, find the suppliers they need, and all of that is AI assisted, agent assisted. But it is an end-to-end solution, and it connects to the different departments. And obviously, all the PAs within the corporate are using the same procured marketplace and go through the same budgets. That's an example.
It absolutely proves what you were saying earlier about this kind of efficiency that just can automate so many.
Correct.
So much.
I mean, making services ultimately technology-driven, right? Or replacing some of those services through technology, let's say, because otherwise they will hire an external agency who comes in, helps them run the event, or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so in this case, they can run it pretty much by themselves. They can hire probably an event manager for the day through the marketplace.
It generates a massive amount of impact.
Right, yeah.
Moving from the vertical to the horizontal, I'd love to know from each of you, running out of time slightly. James, how do you think that AI audio in particular can be impactful across different industries, thinking beyond tech towards media, healthcare?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that ElevenLabs is growing so quickly is that there are so many different use cases for this technology. We are working with streaming providers, we're working with gaming companies, we're working in B2B. Our first product was text-to-speech, but we're now doing conversational AI. And basically, any company that has a call center could be using AI agents to triage and even solve problems for customers. I think AI audio is going to impact any industry where there are currently spoken conversations. Also, if we take a step back, audio is basically the first mode of communication that humans developed. And we've come up with writing and all these different forms of communication, but talking to your computer feels like the most natural way to engage with it. I think it's going to be everywhere.
Wow, big talk. Itxaso, you've got a far more zoomed out perspective. How do you see this evolving into different industries and taking over?
I mean, I definitely think, as I said, AI is going to be everywhere, and it's going to get a time where companies will be using their own data to personalize. There is no reason for me to be opening an email which has an attachment and don't get a notification saying, I just created a folder with this name. Do you want to save this in this folder, which is basically part of the board of whatever? Yes. And that's basically a personalization because it learns from me. So today, we are using a lot of AI solutions based on the off-the-shelf LLMs with generative AI. I think there is a massive opportunity. I work for Microsoft, so those examples I'm using is what I would have loved Microsoft to do for me when I use basically any of the 365 solutions, and is learning from my behaviors within there. And when I open on Monday, it's telling me exactly what do I need to do, and all of that is synchronized, definitely. I'm looking for that day for sure.
Thank you. Well, maybe we can hold you to some of these predictions and check in next year at the summit in April. Guys, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thanks.
Thank you.